Good morning, guys. Today I'm going to show you how to paint this jar. So for that, what we're going to make another layer, okay, and on this layer we are going to make the base color. So for that, we're going to go to the sketch that we already have here. We are going to select it with the select tool. We're going to go to selection and we're going to search for grow. We're going to click on grow and we're going to add 2 pixels. Then we're going to click OK. And then we're going to search for the bucket tool. Okay. Now let's search for the base color. Okay, before we select the bucket tool, let's select the base color. Remember, the base color needs to be between not too dark, okay, and not too bright. Now that we have the base color, we are going to search for the bucket tool. And now that we have it, we filled it in on the layer that we already prepared for our base color. Good. Now we need to right click and we're going to group this. So we're going to click here on quick group. That way it's going to make for us a mask layer. Okay, now that we have a mask layer, we can be able to continue here and deselect. And right now, okay, if you see, we already have the alpha inheritance, so we're going to unselect, okay, the sketch that we have. Now we're going to fill that holes that we have there with the brush. Now, if you see right now, if I move the brush, it's not going to do nothing. Okay, the reason of that is because we're using the base color, and more important, that we are doing it on the layer mask. And over there, we don't have nothing until that moment. So that means it's not going to color that part of the layer. So for that, okay, if you see, no matter if we change here the stabilizer, okay, we can remove it. That is optional. Remember, for painting, we don't need the stabilizer, so you don't need it for that. Now, I'm going to select here the base color layer. Now that I'm on the base color layer, I can be able to fill that holes. Okay, so I'm going to make some fixes right now. So we can be able to have a better result. Okay, remember, the more detailed that you make it, the better it's going to be. Now I'm going to return here to the mask layer. Now I'm going to be able to change it. Okay, we're going to use this mask layer for the shadows. So for that, okay, we're going to try to focus on the details that are going to grab volume to our object. So we're going to change the layer, okay, by changing here the blending mode to multiply, and we're going to use the airbrush. We can change here the size and we can change the opacity. Okay, once we have it, we can start here working on the details. So if you see, we have already enabled the alpha inheritance, so we don't have to worry about getting out of this layer. Okay, so we can do it and pass the brush as many times as we need to get the detail that we need. Trying to focus, okay, on the lines that we already have. Okay, these ones are our guidelines to know which parts, okay, are going to have that extra shadow. Another thing is that it works like boundaries for us, so that helps us for making that boundaries that makes our object more realistic. Okay, we continue passing the brush. Remember, don't be afraid of passing in one or more times, okay, on the same place. The idea is to grab that base of darkness. You see, we can pass it again, okay, on the same places that we already do it to get a better definition. Now we can hide that shadow guidelines, and we now can make some touches here with the brush. So we start here adding that definition. And let's add this other details over here. That later, when we start blending this, you're going to see how it's going to look better. The volume, the object, a way a little bit more realistic. Now, if you notice here, it's a little bit of one mistake, okay? If you remember, I didn't change the color from the base color. That means later I'm going to need to add more darkness here. Okay, where I'm going to need later to add a little bit more of darkness here because that is not the shadow color. Okay, but it's going to work for us for making a blend, okay, between the dark color that we are going to choose and the color that we are using right now. You can see there how it looks, the definition. That's why, okay, we always first start with the shadows. That way we have a better idea of the lightness. If you see, the background that we have right now is completely white. So when we have that way, it's more complex for for us to work. Okay, if we start adding light. So here I'm going to change layer to screen, okay, the blending mode. And now I'm going to change my light color. Okay, I'm going to change it to a color more brighter. So I'm going to press L. And I'm going to press L again to get a color even more brighter. Okay. Now, if you see I don't press L again because the next color is going to be too much brighter, and we don't need that. We don't need that. We only need something that can be brighter enough to keep a good looking of our jar. So let's pass here the brush, okay, very gentle on the borders, okay. That way it's going to get that light, that missing light that we don't have that we didn't have until this moment. Now we start adding that light also to the parts over here on the top. Remember, the light is hitting there, and some reflection is going to be over that side. Also a little bit to the other side. Okay, we can add here a little bit more. That way. Okay. Take your time, okay? And now I'm going to apply a little bit of opacity, okay? If you see in this case, I leave it on 100% of opacity, this blurring, because we want to get a result more defining, okay? Then we return and we continue adding those details. If you see with the blur on 100, it helps us to get that softness, that realistic that we need. Now I add it over here once more time. Slowly. Okay. And remember, then we can use again the blur brush so we can lower. Okay, remember we need to make like a mid-tone, okay, between the lightness that we have, the base color that we used as a dark, and now we're going to need to add a darker color for our shadows. Okay, so now that I already select the multiply layer, okay, the layer for the shadows, I'm going to turn this to a darker color. Okay, and on this darker color, that is going to be the color for our shadows. Now I can pass it a little bit more. Okay, if you see right now, I'm blurring a little bit. Okay, that way we can get a mixture, okay, of that color between the light and the shadows that we're going to add right now. Later, we are going to add an extra detail. There, we select the airbrush and we continue here, making that definition. Remember, you will need to pass more than one time. The reason that we don't add the brush to the 100% is because sometimes we only want a little bit soft shadow, but we don't want it too hard. That's why we lower that opacity to 100%. If we want it a little bit more darker, that's why we pass it again, the brush, to the same place. Okay, there. If you see now, it's starting to look more like a shadow. There. Remember to try to cover also this zone on the middle. This zone, it's also going to receive shadows, so we're going to cover it here. And then we're going to mix it. Okay, but first we need to fill it. Now that we fill it, we can be able to mix it. And we select a brush. Okay, we change our brush, so we can be able to make that mixture. So we start making some movements. Okay. Try to move a little bit like circular. And that way we start getting that structure. Okay. That starts looking a little bit like was from an object on 3D. Very slow. Now we're going to change the brush. Okay, we need to make some adjustments. You see the color is true, is good, but we need to lower a little bit some parts. So we start making that fixes. And making that changes. Now you can see how the middle starts grabbing another structure. It's between shadows and light. Now we are going to add details. Okay, and for that, we need to focus again to the lines that we have. Okay, so we're going to bring the color that we have already for darkness a little bit more to the top. Okay, now I'm going to make another layer, and in that layer I'm going to start adding that details. Now if you see, for the details I'm not changing the layer, and that way we help us to make a more quality work. So that is defining, okay, a better structure for our shadows, okay. So in this case, we are using this layer like a second layer of shadows. The only difference, okay, is that we are not adding this layer like a multiply layer. We are leaving this in normal because we already have the level, okay? And we're going to add the details. They don't have the need, okay, of using multiply. That way we're going to get a better definition on the painting. Okay, you can see here how it's drawing there that line. Okay, that's the good part. So we can continue adding that details, okay, to the other parts. We already see that they look good. We start adding on the other parts that we were missing. So we pass it again. And remember, if you pass too much, you can undo it, or you can use, okay, one of the brushes for blending. Okay, you can use one of the brushes that can work for you for the mixing. There we are start defining better that line. Okay, we need to get a better definition of that volume part. The same we added to the other side. Okay, and now we're going to blend it a little bit. So let's blur it there. Don't forget to take your time. Very, very gentle. Now we're going to add a little bit on the middle. Okay, we don't need to forget that the middle needs to have some darkness. Okay, so now that we add it, we're going to blend it. Okay, so let's blend it a little bit. That way. Trying to make the move, okay, to mix. Remember, we need to mix all the color. Okay, color that is on top of it with the other colors that they're already there. that way. Now let's see again that line. And now let's add a background color. Okay, and the background color needs to have the same idea of the base color that we use. That means it needs to be not too dark and not too bright. Okay, that is the same principle that we're going to use. Because if you use a brighter color, that means the colors they're going to use are going to change dramatically. And that way, we avoid that problem. Okay, there. Now, let's add a new layer. And on this new layer, what we are going to add is the bottom shadow. Okay, the shadow that is going to be over here at the bottom of the jar. So let's use the select tool. Okay, using the freehand selection. And there, we can change the brush, okay, to the airbrush. And we're going to change the color, okay, to a completely black color. Okay, now that is completely dark, we're going to pass it there. Okay. Remember, slowly. If you need to stop on one part, okay, don't be afraid. You can do it perfectly. Now we're going to blend this a little bit, okay? So we're going to blur it. Passing over him, okay? That way we start getting a more familiar color. Now we're going to deselect, okay? So we can fix that lines that are looking at that moment, okay? And finish by adding the final touches, okay? So let's start adding there. All the touches. We pass it all over the corners, okay? That way we are removing that line that looks too straight. Well, that's all. I hope you like the activity of today. Have a nice day and take care. Bye.